I think the compliance program that is designed for these people has to be extremely simple.
इसका तो वो इसका तो ये
उसका वो वाला point ना.
if a software needs to have a user manual, that software is not going to work.
4-5 minutes, Hrushi, 4-5 minutes.
Tone has to be set at the top and it has to be communicated to the workforce on the ground level.
Designing software which will be successfully used by less mature organizations is actually more difficult. Action! Hi guys, welcome to the fourth episode of GRCCast. I'm Hrushi,
And this is Shruti.
and today we'll be talking about compliance programs for MSMEs.
Compliance program for MSMEs and companies who also function culturally like MSMEs.
So please clarify, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, revenue wise or threshold wise, they may not be on paper MSMEs, but then culturally, their operations, functions wise, they still run like MSMEs. So, what we are going to discuss is going to be also relevant for such companies.
So, based on our forays into the MSME market, we haven't seen any concrete compliance programs for MSMEs. So how do you envisage a compliance program for MSMEs?
So there are globally many standards which talk about the essential elements or components of any effective or efficient compliance program. And we cannot, of course, apply them directly to MSMEs because their size of business is generally too small.
Right.
Having said that, there are still 2-3 elements that I would like to associate, which could be indispensable for MSMEs also to take care of. The first one is the tone at the top.
Right.
That signifies commitment from the senior management.
Right.
If you see the kind of workforce that is associated with MSMEs, they may not have that kind of awareness towards compliance issues or aspects of compliance associated with their operational skill set.
Okay.
And therefore, I feel it is the duty of the senior management to bring in such kind of awareness to those people. They may be excellent in their operational skill sets, but their knowledge and their competency is generally confined to the area of their operations.
Okay.
It is not possible for them to extend it to understand the legal intricacies and aspects attached to those areas. Tone has to be set at the top and it has to be communicated to the workforce on the ground level, so that that kind of commitment may be communicated as well, and people know that okay, this organization is pretty serious about compliance, and therefore we have to make ourselves aware of what kind of compliances we have to follow.
Right.
I think the second factor is again linked to the first factor in terms of training and awareness.
Right.
So for the similar reasons, periodic training sessions have to be conducted for the workforce. The trainings have to be given in a way that is understandable for them. The target audience has to be considered while designing these training programs.
Right.
If you again load those training programs with legal provisions, they're not going to understand it.
Correct.
Generally, there are no in-house legal teams in MSMEs. At least that has been my observation so far. So if they have any issues, they need any clarifications, they may go to that one SPOC who may be responsible for the entire organization's compliance. But generally, those SPOCs may be from HR or admin department, and they themselves may not have enough bandwidth and understanding of other areas of compliances.
Correct.
And therefore, these trainings from the third party vendor or even their legal consultants, maybe these should be organized periodically to give them that kind of awareness. Many upcoming laws or even many recently enacted laws, which now the government is trying to include in a generic compliance landscape for every company. It doesn't even, the applicability doesn't even depend on how big or small the company is. For example, transgenders related laws or disabled persons related laws or e-waste, plastic waste, IT Act or e-commerce rules. So many MSMEs are now going for e-commerce platform. There are so many things that these guys don't yet know or they haven't been able to wrap their heads around it.
Right.
And therefore, forget the mid-managerial level, even the senior management is not very aware of these laws. And therefore, owing to these two reasons, I think the compliance program that is designed for these people has to be extremely simple. MSMEs already have their own hurdles to face while implementing any initiative like this. Anything that you design for them has to be so simple that they should perceive it as a business enabler rather than looking at it as an additional burden
Correct.
of compliance on them.
So simplicity from process point of view, training point of view, content point of view, what exactly?
Yeah, everything. I think on all fronts. So the main reason why it has to be extremely simplified is because these companies face a lot of hurdles while implementing a program like this.
Yeah.
It could be the main demotivating factor for these companies. For example, person dependency.
Absolutely. There are several interlinked issues around this fact. Smaller companies, when they are growing, the budgets for activities like compliances are low because they are treated as supporting activities, not
Correct.
as growth oriented activities. Because of which usually they have one or two people handling the entire gamut of compliances. This further shackles them because then they don't get processes built, they don't have institutionalized knowledge, they become dependent only on few people, which if they are not performing, you can't really let them go. Hiring new people, training them becomes an uphill task. Costs like these are not reflected in the balance sheet. MSMEs particularly feel that cost of compliance program is very high, so whatever surplus cash they have, they want to invest in growth. But the situation now is the regulatory complexity is increasing so drastically that even compliance is now an essential function of growth.
Correct.
So
it has to be looked at as a growth function.
Exactly.
Than
Right?
A cost center.
Correct. Since they treat it as a cost center, they have one or two employees basically who are responsible for the entire gamut of compliances, because of which the company is limited by their competency, their maturity, their know-how.
I think when one person is expected to look after the compliances of the entire organization, and that person's core operational area is limited to one particular department, I think the quality
Right.
of compliance may suffer because of limited knowledge of this particular person.
Exactly.
And that in turn could be your potential cost.
Correct.
Because that could be a potential non-compliance or
Correct.
incomplete compliance.
Correct.
So these kinds of costs may not reflect on your balance sheets, but they are a cost.
And they are actually seen when an MSME tries to go into a contractual arrangement with a bigger player.
Correct. Or even for acquisitions, mergers.
Correct, right? Where due diligence doesn't go that well.
Yes.
Steve Jobs once famously said that successful companies, along with management productivity, they start focusing on workforce productivity. So same applies for the compliance aspect as well, because it is becoming more and more critical as the regulatory complexity is increasing.
Yes. So recently, the Department of Justice, US Department of Justice, came up with a safe harbor related policy where it has incentivized the acquiring companies to self-report misconduct that they have found within the acquired companies.
Okay.
And that only reaffirms their a
Exactly.
greater importance from their side on transparency
Exactly.
and accountability. And so I think, yes, regulators are paying a lot of attention to these things. After having seen these hurdles, now if I ask you, considering your technology experience in this space so far, if you were to design a solution, an
Right.
automated solution for MSMEs,
Right.
because generally you've seen that MSMEs are not willing to invest in automation for these processes.
Right.
So, but if you were to design one for them, how
Right.
do you think it would be, and what would be the essential parts of them?
I would like to start by dispelling a myth. I feel that automation is costly is a myth, even for MSMEs.
Okay.
In fact, I would go to the extent of saying that it is a cost cutting measure. So if you actually look at two companies of similar sizes, similar operations, one having automation and processes and a program, and the other doing everything manually with person dependence, the cost difference is 5 to 6 times.
Okay.
So it is pretty huge. Then comes the next point. For an automation solution, it has to be extremely easy to use.
Correct.
Right? Nowadays, the attention spans are so low, and people are using anyway so many softwares, they don't want to learn the new software again.
Yeah.
So the learning experience should be as intuitive as possible. If a software needs to have a user manual, that software is not going to work.
now.
basically. In
Yes.
today's times,
Yes.
basically.
Similarly, content also has to be extremely simple. Again, when I say content, I mean the database of compliance that I prepare for them,
Right.
which could act as a ready reference material for them for
Right.
or a compliance calendar for them. That
Right.
has to be extremely simple for them to just learn the action items coming out of those compliance or legal provisions rather
Correct.
than the legal provisions themselves.
Exactly.
So even even the consequence of non-compliance has to be given to them in a very, very specific manner, so that they are aware of the risk that they are sitting on if they don't comply with it, but they don't have to get into the legal interpretation of it.
People should not feel overwhelmed because of it.
Hmm.
So the features that are given
Hmm.
in that particular software should be carefully tailored for MSMEs. No additional features which would
Yes.
put a mental pressure or some kind of mental burden on the
Yes.
users should be
Or
given.
the user interface itself or the dashboard itself should be very easy for them to understand. Like all of us take no time in learning Instagram or Facebook or the social media platforms nowadays, and that's
Correct.
exactly how this tool should
Exactly. The onboarding should be really quick.
be.
So the onboarding process for MSMEs cannot be more than a few days. They don't have time, bandwidth, and resources to spare for this kind of
For
efforts.
such
Right?
longer processes, right?
Also, configurability of the system should be pretty neat. Uh, Assigning new users, mapping new compliances, regulatory change management should be as automated as possible. So actually, designing software which will be successfully used by less mature organizations is actually more difficult than designing software for mature organizations.
That's
so
true.
actually here is a tougher challenge.
So basically, all those companies who want to enter into contracts with corporate giants, or who want those kind of opportunities, or who are looking to be acquired by or merged with other companies, or even for their own growth and scaling up or
Right.
higher scalability, I think automation is going to be their sustainable process if they want to keep their compliance game up at all times. So this was our take on compliance programs for MSMEs, and we would love to hear from you if you want to add anything to this. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.